that's an option, but then Duda could perhaps force the queens off with queen g2, so I really think this one is moving in Duda's favor.
Definitely. Duda has very good fighting chances now, as he is also only 1 minute behind Magnus now on the clock.
Yeah, Magnus's time advantage is dwindling. His advantage has completely disappeared. It's now in Duda's favor. King h7 was chosen by Magnus. Alright, so I still like queen g2, forcing the queen trade.
Queen g2 forcing the queen trade is certainly interesting, but what are your thoughts on maybe something really tricky? What about knight to g4?
Definitely an option as well. Wow, hitting the knight on e4, and then also after bishop takes g6, black would be forced to recapture with the king. And I don't know if you saw, but Magnus threw up his hands. He was like, what am I doing? Because he was in complete control, and now it's Duda who's in the driver's seat. Although Duda is down 1.5 minutes on the clock.
Duda, super good with the tactics, right? I mean, I think knight g4 is potentially, you know, a move that could really swing this in his direction.
Right, but there's quite a bit of calculating. I mean, knight g4, queen h3, I suppose queen g2, knight g3, king f2. He goes knight f5 instead, but oh, wait, what is that? Queen h3? Oh, knight f4.
And played instantly by Magnus.
Oh, and look at the head check from Duda. That's a massive blunder. Knight takes g3 will be met with knight takes g3 check, and you win quite some material as you will emerge.
Both queens are hanging here, as well as, well, a couple of the knights too. But there's a lot of options here. There's knight takes g3. You can maybe try, wow, I don't even know what else you could play. If queen takes e4 here from Duda, there's simply queen to g2 with checkmate.
Yeah, I think this move knight f4 by Magnus seals the game. I think you're gonna have to go into that endgame. But then after all of the trades, Magnus will have a rook and 3 pawns against the 2 minor pieces. And I feel like the 2 minor pieces cannot do that much damage. So I feel like Magnus is in a great spot now to win the match.
Right, knight takes e2 is going to come in here from Magnus probably relatively quickly. There's a lot of pawns on that king side.
Yeah, I wonder why he's paused to think. I mean, okay, goes rook f8, hitting the bishop, forcing knight takes e5. Now knight takes e2 has to be played. And yeah, now g5, followed by king g7. I don't see a good way for Duda to keep the game going here.
As a reminder to everyone, even a draw is going to get Magnus into the next level.
Absolutely. But now perhaps knight d7, aiming for c5, where it would hit the pawn on b7. He goes knight d3 instead. Perhaps now Magnus has the time to go b7, b6, stopping that knight jump. So let's see. I mean, like you pointed out, I mean, a draw is going to mean a match win for Magnus, so it's really hard for Duda to win this position.
It is very difficult. Magnus has those connected pass pawns on the G file and H file. The white bishop is going to be tied down over there.
Right, so we see Duda going c4 now. Rook f5 can be met with c5. I mean, if that a pawn disappears, the game is practically over. You're never going to win that. So Magnus goes rook b8, knight c5 now. I mean, this is still not over anyway. If Duda can win that a pawn, he has a real shot at winning, because also that bishop on h5 is blocking all of the pawns on the king side.
Yeah, Magnus doesn't really want to play rook to a8 here because he has to worry a little bit about how passive his rook is going to be. So instead he plays rook to b2.
King e3 by Duda. Now, I mean, you can go rook a2, get rid of the a pawn, but Duda will take on a6, take on c7, and all he needs is one passed pawn, and that c pawn could potentially give him the win. I mean, it's still a tall task.
Well, he could go c6 after knight takes a6 instead of taking immediately on a5, which would let him, you know, keep his c pawn for now.
Oh, that is a fantastic move by Magnus. And look at Duda. He's like, how did I miss that move? I think if Magnus takes the a pawn, that's practically match over. Because look at this. Okay, king e4, knight b8. Okay, but now what?
c5, perhaps?
Okay, the king moves up to d5, and then, I mean, that c pawn is probably going to be lost sooner or later. I mean, the question is whether Magnus can quickly set his own pawns in motion.
Well, it's kind of interesting because I believe if Magnus tries to keep the king, if Duda tries to keep the king close with king to d5, there was potentially rook a6 and you could swing the rook over to h2, but after king f6, now it's a little less clear.
Right, so king f6 trick, very logical move by Magnus. He was aiming to go king f5 and push the g-pawn. That's why Duda played bishop g4, forcing that king back. But again, if Magnus gets those pawns rolling, I think it will be really hard for Duda to prolong this game. So let's see what he's going to do. Maybe king takes c5, takes with the knight instead, but now rook g1 how do you stop the g-pawn?
That's a great question.
And g4, there the pawn goes. Also h5, h4. Magnus's moves are just too easy here. And Nemo, Duda down to 40 seconds on the clock.
Duda down to 40 seconds. This is going to be crazy. Well, he knows he has to push for the win, so he's really trying to spend all of his time doing that.
Yeah, but it's really hard. I mean, you have to move the knight out of the way, then c5, c6. But it's, I mean, Magnus's play is just so easy.
He's spending a lot of time on this move. Unfortunately, knight e4 is actually not even going to stop the g3 pawn push, as Magnus can just play g3.
Yeah, g3 here looks like a very logical move for Magnus. Also h5, I mean, pushing the h-pawn also seems pretty tough. You could give a check first, king e5, okay, and rook c1. All Magnus needs to do is get rid of that c-pawn. Bishop h3 therefore was forced, and a rook c2. I mean, I think knight takes g3 is forced, but rook takes c5, it's gonna be a draw.
This is gonna be a draw.
All you have to do is get rid of one of the minor pieces. Rook c3 is gonna take the knight, and that's gonna be it.
Wow.
Yeah, and a very smooth match win here for Magnus. I mean, at some point the game was slipping in Duda's favor. Magnus always was out on the clock. Perhaps there was one moment where Duda was